Protection and the United States Attorney's Office for the Western District of Washington for their excellent work. I also want to thank Secretary Yellen and her team at the Treasury Department, including IRS Criminal Investigation, as well as CFTC Chairman Benham and his team for their extraordinary partnership in this matter. In just the past month, the Justice Department has successfully prosecuted the CEOs of two of the world's largest cryptocurrency exchanges in two separate criminal cases. The message here should be clear. Using new technology to break the law does not make you a disruptor. It makes you a criminal. This Justice Department has no tolerance for crimes that threaten our economic institutions and undermine public trust in the fairness of those institutions. And we will hold accountable the individuals who commit and profit from them. I'm now pleased to turn the podium over to Secretary Yellen.
Good afternoon. I'm very glad to join Attorney General Garland, Deputy Attorney General Monaco, and CFTC Chairman Benham on such an important occasion. We're here today to announce the Treasury Department's historic action, the largest enforcement action in Treasury's history against Binance, the world's largest virtual currency exchange, for its consistent and egregious violations of U.S. anti-money laundering and sanctions law. Protecting the U.S. financial system, and through that, the global financial system, is core to the Treasury Department's mission. And ever since Binance launched its convertible virtual currency platform, it has knowingly evaded the U.S. laws designed to protect these systems. Over more than 3 years, FinCEN, OFAC, and IRS criminal investigation thoroughly investigated key aspects of Binance's activities. Our work revealed that Binance claimed to have exited the U.S. market years ago, but actually did not, retaining U.S. users and other significant ties with the United States. It also had critical gaps in its anti-money laundering program and practices, from a lack of risk-based procedures for various offerings to instructing staff to withhold information from law enforcement. It deliberately undermined its own sanctions monitoring controls, and it failed to report suspicious transactions. This meant Binance was allowing illicit actors to transact freely, supporting activities from child sexual abuse to illegal narcotics to terrorism across more than 100,000 transactions. That includes transactions associated with terrorist groups like Hamas's Al-Qassam brigades, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, Al-Qaeda, and ISIS. Binance processed these transactions, but it never filed a single suspicious activity report, and it also allowed over 1.5 million virtual currency trades that violated U.S. sanctions. So we have taken the largest enforcement action in Treasury's history. FinCEN's settlement agreement assesses a penalty of $3.4 billion. OFAC's settlement agreement assesses a penalty of nearly $1 billion. Binance is also required to report the suspicious transactions it has failed to report to date, and to establish an effective anti-money laundering program to support the global AML-CFT regime. And the settlement agreements subject Binance to increased scrutiny for 5 years through a third-party monitor overseen by FinCEN, who will ensure Binance's complete exit from the United States. The monitor will be able to access Binance's systems transactions, and accounts, and will review and report on all actions included in the settlement agreements. Failure to live up to these obligations could expose Binance to substantial additional penalties. The result of these agreements will be an end to company behavior that has posed risk to the U.S. financial system, U.S. citizens, and our country's national security for too long. And let me be clear, we're also sending a message to the virtual currency industry more broadly, today and for the future. If virtual currency exchanges and financial technology firms wish to realize the tremendous benefits of being part of the U.S. financial system and serving U.S. customers, they must play by the rules. And if they do not, the U.S. government will take action. Today's announcement shows the Treasury is prepared to use all of its tools to carry out its crucial mandate of combating illicit finance and protecting the U.S. financial system, and this will make all of us safer. I want to end by thanking FinCEN, OFAC, and IRS criminal investigation employees who play a central role in protecting our national security. Adequate resourcing was critical to carrying out this work. Thank you also to the partner agencies here today for such effective collaboration. And with that, I'll turn the floor over to Deputy Attorney General Monaco.
Thank you, Madam Secretary, and good afternoon. Today is a watershed moment. The Department of Justice and its partners are holding accountable the world's largest cryptocurrency exchange and the CEO who ran it for their criminal conduct. Binance vaulted to the top of the crypto market in part through the scheme exposed today by pursuing growth, market share, and profits at the expense of compliance with U.S. law. Today's charges and guilty pleas, combined with a more than $4 billion financial penalty, demonstrate the Justice Department's commitment to corporate accountability. And they sent an unmistakable message to crypto and DeFi companies: if you serve U.S. customers, you must obey U.S. law. A corporate strategy that puts profits over compliance isn't a path to riches, it's a path to federal prosecution. As detailed in the statement of facts, Changpeng Zhao was warned by his own compliance team that Binance lacked basic safeguards to prevent users from evading U.S. sanctions. He was warned of the high risk associated with some customers on their exchange. He was even warned that the CFO of another company had been arrested for sanctions violations and that the same thing could happen at Binance. But rather than implement the basic anti-money laundering safeguards that his team recommended, safeguards required by U.S. law, Binance and its founder operated as though the rules didn't apply, as though they were beyond our reach. Crypto assets may be advertised as borderless in nature, but the Department of Justice will enforce U.S. law across and throughout crypto markets, even in their darkest corners. Some say the key to success in the tech sector is to move fast and break things. Today's actions show that if what you break is the law, there will be consequences. Over 5 years, while building its business with U.S. customers, Binance enabled nearly $1 billion in illegal payments involving sanctioned countries and individuals. These actions put our collective security at risk. Today, companies are increasingly operating on the front lines of the geopolitical and national security challenges that mark today's global environment. That's why the Justice Department is focused on the intersection of corporate crime and national security. Today, corporate crime undermines not only our markets and investors, but also our national security. The laws we are enforcing today were designed to protect the security of our financial markets and to protect our financial institutions from exploitation by terrorists and money launderers. Today's actions show that those rules apply equally to traditional financial institutions and those powered by decentralized and cutting-edge technologies. Today's resolutions are the result of and a credit to the combined energy and expertise of prosecutors and law enforcement agents from across the government. And in particular, I'd like to thank Nicole Argentieri, the Acting Assistant Attorney General for the Criminal Division, who's here today, Matt Olson, the Assistant Attorney General for National Security, who's also here on stage, and Tessa Gorman, U.S. Attorney for the Western District of Washington. They each lead teams who have worked tirelessly on this case. The partnership between the Criminal Division's money laundering and asset recovery experts and the National Security Division's export control and counterintelligence experts is a response to the growing convergence of white-collar and national security investigations. So we're combining our deep expertise from across the department to combat these new and evolving threats. Together with our partners, the Justice Department will hold accountable those who occupy the C-suite and the boardroom if they exploit technologies in violation of our laws. With that, I'll turn it over to Chairman Benham.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Attorney General Garland, Treasury Secretary Yellen, Deputy Attorney General Monaco, and all of our law enforcement counterparts. Today, the CFTC stands with the Department of Justice and the Treasury Department in protecting U.S. investors and financial markets from those who sought to create an empire through a calculated strategy of regulatory avoidance and arbitrage, outright defiance of the law, and breaching the fundamental principles of market behavior. Today, the CFTC agreed to resolve charges against Binance, its founder and CEO, Changpeng Zhao, and its former Chief Compliance Officer, Samuel Lim. Binance is the world's largest digital asset exchange and offers trading in spot digital assets and digital asset derivatives, including CFTC jurisdictional products such as Bitcoin futures, options, and swaps. The proposed orders impose a civil monetary penalty and disgorgement totaling $2.7 billion against Binance, $150 million civil monetary penalty against Zhao, and a $1.5 million penalty against Lim. Binance's activities undermine the foundation of safe and sound financial markets by intentionally avoiding basic, fundamental obligations that apply to exchanges, all the while collecting approximately $1.35 billion in trading fees from U.S. customers. Beyond the risks imposed on the U.S. financial system, Binance's activities impacted populations beyond investors in ways that cannot be measured in dollars and cents. As evidenced by the internal chats of Binance's CCO and others, Binance recognized that its platform was used to facilitate criminal activity, including terrorist financing, but chose to turn a blind eye, all in the name of profits. More disturbing, Binance and its leaders sought to dupe and indoctrinate their employees and customers, building a cult-like following premised on circumventing their own compliance controls to maximize corporate profits above all else. As charged in the CFTC complaint filed in March of this year and set forth in the consent order, Binance made deliberate, strategic, and calculated decisions to evade federal law over a period of nearly 4 years. Binance, under Zhao's direction and control, knowingly solicited and accepted orders from US-based customers to trade digital asset commodity derivatives products and operated an exchange for the trading of futures, options, swaps, and leveraged retail commodity transactions. Throughout this time period, Binance never registered with the CFTC as is required under US law. The resolution of the action against Binance and Zhao within just 8 months of its filing solidifies the CFTC's reputation as the proven leader in the civil enforcement space when it comes to digital assets. We are stalwart in ensuring CFTC registrants comply with our statute and regulations, which serve to protect broader financial health, and that directly impacts millions of American investors. Binance failed to diligently supervise its derivatives markets activities and miscarried requirements to implement adequate anti-money laundering, know your customer, and customer identification programs required for certain CFTC registrants. These provisions serve to protect all Americans from those who seek to use the financial markets to facilitate criminal activities, including domestic and international terrorism. As there remain certain classes of registrants who have lesser requirements, I believe our action here underscores what we could accomplish in CFTC markets with broader authority. American investors, small and large, have demonstrated eagerness to incorporate digital asset products into their portfolios. It is our duty to ensure that when they do so, the full protections afforded by our regulatory oversight are in place, and that illegal and illicit conduct is swiftly addressed. When, as here, an entity goes even further, deliberately avoiding to employ meaningful access controls, intentionally avoiding knowing customers' identities, and actively concealing the presence of U.S. customers on its platforms, there is no question that the CFTC will strike hard and aggressively. I want to commend the incredible work of Candy Hahn, Joseph Plott, Catherine Paulson, Joseph Patrick, Matthew Edelstein, Elizabeth Pendleton, Scott Williamson, and Robert Howell. I'd also like to acknowledge our Director of Enforcement, Ian McGinley, and Principal Deputy Director and Chief Counsel, Gretchen Lowe. Thank you.
Evan from CNN.
One on topic and one off topic question, if you will indulge.
That depends on the question.
So on the on topic, based on the allegations of this and some of the other cases that you brought, I'm wondering whether the concern in the industry about the ability of some of these startup companies, some of the smaller companies, to abide by this very costly regulatory and legal regimen that the United States requires, whether it will mean that you can't really do virtual currency and have this industry thrive and some of the cutting edge things that Lisa and Monica just mentioned with that very heavy burden of regulatory compliance. I'm wondering whether you have a message for the industry when it comes to that. And then if I can ask my off-topic question, we're expecting at any moment the Israeli government and some of the other parties to announce an agreement for the release of hostages being held by Hamas. If you can comment on that, and also just what the Justice Department and some of the other agencies that are represented here are doing to respond to the attacks in Israel on October 7th. We know obviously that Hamas has had a presence here in the United States, and the concern about how they raise money, including of course by cryptocurrency, is something that is on everyone's mind. I'm wondering what you're doing about that in light of what happened.
All right, let me start with the off topic. I was in a meeting this morning with national security officials, law enforcement officials, and the president regarding fentanyl. And he told the press that his team has been actively negotiating over possibility of bringing home some of the hostages. They thought that we were very close to being able to do that, but that he couldn't say anything more at that time. And I also can't say anything more at this time. With respect to the deaths of Americans, we always investigate deaths of Americans, and we are actively investigating the deaths of the Americans using all the tools available to us. We have, I think, as the FBI director said at a recent you don't get a special benefit because you think that what you're doing is better for society or better for small business or better for big business or better for international. The United States has laws, and everybody, including cryptocurrency platforms, have to follow the law.
All right. Chris Bloomberg.
There's been a lot of concern about how unregulated the cryptocurrency markets are. You were able to get these guilty pleas. It took a long time. I'm just wondering, how do you feel like realistically the significance of these guilty pleas are? What do you believe it could, what kind of impact could it actually have on the cryptocurrency markets? And then just a quick follow up is, there is criticism that this is not this isn't significant enough. That there might be a situation in which nobody goes to jail, and the penalty itself, Binance is able to pay that penalty. How do you respond to that criticism?
I think I'm going to call on Nicole Argentieri, who's the Acting Assistant Attorney General for the Criminal Division, to answer most of the questions that you're talking about. The broader ones that have to do with regulation, it's possible Secretary Yellen or the CFTC Chair would address. Where'd you go? Oh, over here.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So I'll take the second question first. I think looking at the pleas today, by every possible measure, these are some of the most significant penalties that the department has ever imposed on a financial institution. Not only is it one of the largest penalties imposed against a financial institution, this is the largest penalty that's ever been imposed on a money services business. It's the first corporate resolution with a cryptocurrency exchange, and it's the first resolution with an MSB for sanctions violations. And the financial penalty is it's not the only significant part of the resolution. Binance, which is the parent holding company, is agreeing to plead guilty. And as part of that, we're going to impose a monitor for 3 years. The company has to enhance its compliance program and to continue to cooperate with the department. So we think it's quite a significant resolution. In addition, the agreement with the company requires Zhao to step down from his role as CEO and prohibits him from any present or future involvement in operating or managing Binance. So we think this is a very significant resolution. In what tools do we have and what should people take away from today? I think that today's actions show that if you serve US customers, you must comply with US law. US financial institutions are the gatekeepers for the safety and security of our financial system. And because Binance served a substantial amount of US customers, it was a US financial institution that was required to comply with anti-money laundering laws. And what those laws say is that Binance had to have an effective anti-money laundering compliance program, including procedures to know its customers and to monitor for suspicious activity. And what happened instead is Binance and Zhao prioritized profit over compliance. And that failure to implement effective AML procedures led Binance to cause US customers to transact with customers in Iran that violated US sanctions.
Treasury or CFTC want to? The podium is yours.
Well, just very briefly, I agree with the comments that were just made. We actually have rather strong legal authorities to police this type of activity. Virtual currency exchanges are financial institutions. Financial institutions of all sizes are required to comply with AML, CFT, and sanctions obligations that they have. And cryptocurrency or virtual currency exchanges have those obligations as well. And I think today's actions show that we're very serious about enforcing the strong regulations that are already in place to make sure that illegal transactions are not fostered by cryptocurrency entities. This is a regime, just as banks can flourish, meeting these obligations. This is a regime that can support responsible innovation. It's not meant to end cryptocurrency activities, but to the extent they occur, it must be consistent with US law.
I'll just say from a market's perspective and distinguishing Secretary Yellen's comments about AML and KYC, I've seen and we've seen gaps in the current regulatory structure around digital assets. I've advocated for filling in some of these gaps, specifically around commodity tokens. And I do think if we're able to do that, obviously with Congress's help, we can prevent these actions from happening and not have to be here after the fact. Some of the traditional tools of registration, surveillance, examinations, they've worked well for decades in the US financial system for both market regulators. And we think those types of tools around digital assets, if improved and expanded, would certainly help in preventing some of these bad actions from happening again in the future.
Hello. I had a question both for the DOJ and Treasury. So when it comes to the types of priorities, enforcement priorities in crypto that the DOJ has had, there was a big focus obviously on digital platforms that commit crimes or that at least let them happen. We've obviously seen the DOJ bring big cases now against Binance, FTX. Treasury separately has also increasingly taken actions against crypto players when it comes to money laundering or sanctions violations. So in light of these actions, having taken these actions in the market so far, what are your priorities now, both for the DOJ and Treasury going forward when it comes to crypto oversight? Are you thinking of deploying different types of strategies, especially since we're seeing a growing aspect and angle when it comes to national security concerns beyond, say, a financial stability concern when it comes to these crypto platforms?
Great question. I'm going to let the deputy begin the answer for the Justice Department and kick it over to Matt if we need on national security.
Thanks very much for the question, Stefania. I mean, first thing I'd say is these are incredibly complicated and resource intensive and time consuming cases. And so we need the resources, and we're willing to and have, as we've shown today and in prior cases, deploy those resources. So we're always looking to add our resources and agent investigators, prosecutors. Second thing I'd say is you have seen both with our actions today and in prior cases that we will be relentless in using every tool that we currently have to deploy against those who seek to use technologies in a way that abuse those platforms, that cause the or don't prevent the use of those platforms for illicit activities. But we always want to make sure that we're working with Congress and others to make sure those tools that we have today stay up to date, right? We know that the bad guys and the threat actors will try to exploit every crack and crevice they can to exploit technologies, to exploit gaps in the law. You've heard the CFTC chairman talk about some of the tools he needs. So we want to make sure the existing laws stay up to date. And then I think we very much want to work with those in Congress and others who want to ensure that we can deploy every tool possible to make sure that the technologies that can help our prosperity and help our financial system also aren't ripe for abuse by illicit actors. That's why you've seen us do things like create the National Cryptocurrency Enforcement Team. That's why, and Matt Olson can speak to this, that's why they created the National Security Cyber Unit, because what we're seeing is more and more convergence of the exploitation, both of the financial system and corporate crime in the national security space. I think I'll ask Matt to come up, and I'm sure Treasury Secretary Yellen might want to speak to this as well.
Thank you, Lisa. Yeah, I would just say briefly that as we respond to the nature of the threats we see today around the world, whether we're talking about terrorism, we're talking about nation state adversaries like Russia and China and Iran, we are increasingly.
Okay, I think I got my voice back. Let me know if you guys can hear me. Somebody give me a thumbs up in the chat. We can continue to look at some of this, but I wanted to address some of it. So if you're just tuning in, what happened? CZ, founder of Binance, charged $4 billion. Had to step down from CEO. Hope you guys can hear me. And this is the Department of Justice, basically explaining why they did all this. And so I want to talk about some things that they're not mentioning here. Let me pull that down just for a second, and I'll pull it back up. All right, sweet. You guys can hear me. So we're gonna roll. Gonna give you some insight that you might not know, and then we can get back into it. See if there's any decent questions left. So let's roll with this real quick. I was gonna make a video on this earlier, so I already had this presentation ready. So we're gonna look at it together. Let's go ahead. Let's do this is good enough. So what happened? Conspiracy. Government charges Binance with following: conspiracy, conducting unlicensed money transmitter license, and violating international Economics Power Act. What you can tell from that is that they charged him $4 billion, which is one of the largest charges they've ever charged on this. Here's some things, though, that like some positive light to this. Before I go into this, I'll just say that you have to remember FTX, the customers were the ones that like really got screwed over. As of right now, it's looking like the customer funds are safe. I don't know. I don't want to say that definitively on live or any video and then something happened. As of right now, it looks like the customer funds are safe. So what we can view from this is it looks like essentially CZ, owner of Binance, negotiated with the government. I will pay you guys $4 billion. I will do that other thing for 3 years where I'm regulated. I will step down as CEO and I will not be in prison like SBF for 100 years. And so basically that's what happened. There's a greater, we'll call it a theory behind all of this. Let me say, I'll pull this up before I move on to some of the other crazy things. Is this needed to happen for a potential ETF? The ETF filing of, if you're watching my channel, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Specifically, BlackRock, the largest fund in the world. So let's pull that up and let's look at this. Like, not really conspiracy, but like let's look at this for a second. This was in this is June of this year. Lots of chatter on this BlackRock Bitcoin ETF, and rightfully so. BlackRock, more or less, is the U.S. government, blah, blah. They've also received approval on 575 out of 576 of ETF applications. But listen to this. Listen to this. This is crazy. One thing I'll say, there's no chance, zero, that this ETF is approved with Binance in its current position of the market dominance. If this ETF is approved, Binance is either gone entirely or their role in price discovery is massively diminished. If Binance holds on to its current level of influence, no chance this ETF is approved. I don't know about you, but it looks like this domino had to fall in order for the ETF approval, and the right people made it fall. And so let's go back into these like kind of bullish sentiments. One of the first ones I saw was Flory. This was honestly not as well received as I thought it would be, but CZ paid off the government. He stepped down as CEO. The reality is just cooperated with the government and can pump to Valhalla. ETF approval is imminent, and this is bullish. To back that up, I responded to Coffeezilla because Coffeezilla was basically just like, look, I told you guys this is a scam. I like coffee, but his primary audience is anti-crypto. So, of course, he's going to celebrate these losses with his audience because he's anti-crypto. I don't think it's the glass half empty kind of thing. I'm kind of viewing it as half full. He still owns Binance. Like, just because he stepped down as CEO doesn't mean he doesn't own Binance anymore. The company is valued at $96 billion. Now you can say, Chris, well, how much of that is BNB? Well, let's look at it. The BNB market cap what's going on right now? BNB market cap currently is at $36 billion. So $36 billion out of the $96 billion is BNB. BNB has only been affected by 4% by this. What do we got in chat? We got Nod. I think I'm losing some connection. Try to stay with me, guys. Even if you can't see me, hopefully you can hear me fine. Binance has only dropped 4%. 36 billion out of the total valuation at like 96 billion. I think he lost another 12 billion in net worth, so we'll still put it around the 80 billion. In other words, CZ and Binance is worth a lot of money, a lot more than a $4 billion fine. So now that the government can get this out of the way, we just got past one of the greatest FUDs of crypto. FUD, if you will, is, all right, FTX fell out. But at the end of the day, what was the problem with FTX? The problem was Sam Bankman-Fried misusing our funds, Alameda Research misusing our funds, all the way, it was a misuse of central exchanges using funds. This has been built up to be the next FTX fallout. If this is all that it is I'm saying these ifs, if it's a $4 billion fine, he steps down as CEO and no jail time and keeps it, then we're past a huge milestone. This is like one of the biggest giants left to fall is Binance. Bitcoin is still above 36K. It's 36,975 right now. So, I mean, all in all, and let's talk a little bit more. Here's some more perspectives. CZ handled the shutdown of his $23 billion stablecoin with zero funds lost. Again, I'm not going to make definitives on this. We'll see what happens afterwards. Negotiated with a multi-billion-dollar settlement with government agencies, and I can still trade and withdraw from there with no issues through all that. We'll see if that continues, and that's the case for Binance. But as of right now, if Binance maintains safety over customers' funds, this is looking good. This is one step closer to the ETF. Now, again, I'm a nobody. Don't listen to like everything I say. Please go do your own research. I'm just saying here's what I think is going to happen. I think that the media is going to take this. I'll go ahead, even though I got bad internet right now. I think the media is going to take this and spin a pretty bad narrative around it. Look, crypto's a scam. They did all this stuff with with Bitcoin, which, by the way, has US dollar never been used for some of this stuff? I mean, they're trying to say like that they use Bitcoin, like the Hamas and Israel and everything going on with war right now, like use Bitcoin towards these things, and CZ and Binance didn't do anything about it. Has the US dollar never been used for anything like that? You know, has it never been used for drugs or killing or anything like? Come on now, come on, like that. That's a little wild to me. Those conclusions just do not make sense. But my point of saying all this is that if this is it, it's the $4 billion. If they're able to settle that and move on, and the next step could be the ETF, I think media is going to try to paint this like they painted FTX, which at the end of the day, FTX was not a crypto problem. It was a central problem. It was an SBF problem, a Caroline problem, an Alameda Research problem. It was not a crypto problem. I think this is around the same. You know, they're going to be point fingers at the whole Binance situation, but it's really not that bad. Like, I would say this would be one of those scenarios where there's a lot of way worse scenarios, but CZ might not even go to jail. SBF's in jail for over 100 years. 100 years. So like, I don't know. Like, am I viewing this wrong? Do you think I'm viewing this wrong? Because like, to me, it's like, despite what they say, it looks like if you zoom out, you let like your emotions just kind of go to the side. What it looks like to me is that they're regulating things, and when they get enough regulation, it's going to be safer for them to do an ETF. It's going to be safer for the government to get involved. Now, that's a whole different debate, whether the government should be involved, whether we should be banking on that, whether they want to buy your crypto. That's a whole different debate. I'm not getting into that right now. But as far as this goes, it's looking to me like they wanted their money, they wanted regulation, but there's not like a definitive, like, we want to end crypto. I think one of the last people to speak was even saying that they want the innovation and the new technology. They just want it on their terms and their regulated terms. So I think for me, as long as there's not like over-regulation and there's a good happy medium, this is probably a step in the right direction regarding an ETF, regarding like crypto, like prices and everything like that. So anyways, there's a lot more angles to this. I could be completely wrong. Maybe I wake up tomorrow and CZ's like, oh shoot, how do I come up with $4 billion? Maybe I'll sell a bunch of BNB. I don't know. And only time will tell. But just one outlook on everything that you just saw is just remember that ultimately this could be one step closer to an ETF. And this sounded more like a negotiation to me than it did like a hammer. He's not in jail. I mean, that's the big part of this. He's not in jail. He's getting fined. A guy with a $96 billion net worth company is, you know, despite where those assets are, is being fined $4 billion. I don't know, chat. What do you guys think? US wants their share of Binance. They do. Yeah, that's exactly it. Like, Binance, US wants their share. They want those attendees too, $4 billion. And it's, yeah, looking for a shakeout. And I mean, honestly, the charts don't care. Like, again, okay, another thing. I mean, if you're familiar with me, you know, like, obviously anything can happen. Like, I would say, we talked about this on one of the Twitter spaces today. Like, this is one of the biggest FUDs in crypto, like the whole Binance thing. So if this is it, it's looking pretty good. The next biggest FUD would be Tether, USDT, which is a whole different like conversation. If we can pass that and this, like, that's significant. But ultimately, we never know. And I mean, Bitcoin could be 10K tomorrow. It could be 100K tomorrow. Probably wouldn't be either of those extremes tomorrow, but the point of it is we don't know. But overall, Bitcoin is up, and I say Bitcoin, like I do love Bitcoin, but Bitcoin, if you're not familiar with crypto, is pretty much the moves the market. If Bitcoin's up, the rest of the market's probably up. If Bitcoin's down, the rest of the market's probably down. So it's a good indicator. Bitcoin's up 133% during the year, despite that. I don't even know what the S&P 500 is right now, but it's basically decoupled from the S&P 500, at least on the short term. Really rebounded again, because what happened last year is we saw FTX go down, we saw Voyager go down, we saw other exchanges go down, and then people were like, "Oh wait, this is not a crypto problem. This is like a central problem, a centralization problem. Maybe it's maybe we're factoring all this in, and this is peak FUD." I was buying Bitcoin at 16K when during that dip, by the way. So I'm up 100% on my Bitcoin buys. Some of them I DCA'd from here to here. And then right now we're seeing, look at this. Right now we're seeing Binance. Granted, this is very short, so who knows what could happen in the next 48 hours, especially when this gets mainstream attention. It's already getting mainstream attention, but you'll see more and more because you're early to seeing this. You're very early to seeing this. But despite that, we're still over 36K. I mean, we were at 16K last year. We're over 36K. The rest of the market is honestly looking pretty good despite the last few days. So I don't know. Overall, I'm still feeling pretty good. Obviously, we have to factor in macro. I'm sitting here talking to you about this and realized that I wasn't sharing my screen. Here, let me share my screen with you real quick. Yeah, this is what I was looking at. So what I was saying earlier was, I kind of explained through it. But if you look at this dip right here, the 16K, this is FTX. And right now, even with Binance, and by the way, Kraken is getting sued by the SEC as well. Crypto markets don't care, man. We're all the Bitcoin halving is next year. If you don't know what that is, I would definitely look into it. It's going to be around March. Historically, I'll actually I'll show you a chart real quick. This guy, Dogfather, did a really good write-up on this. I'd recommend reading it. I wonder if it's definitely probably one of his highlights. But historically, the Bitcoin halving, of course, he didn't highlight it, is leads. Here it is. So the leading up to the Bitcoin halving, this is what you saw happen to the Bitcoin charts. For the first cycle, it went up 6,734%. For the second cycle, it went up 301%. For the third cycle, it'd be 541%. This is post halving. So it's right now, people are front running the Bitcoin halving. After the halving, this is the little data that we have. I'm always skeptical on data when it comes to crypto because we only have a decade to work with. But right now, the data is showing that after the halving, things get better, essentially. So right now, we have people front running it. And then afterwards, we have the expectations of a run. And we have a lot of people waiting for these approvals, waiting for these ETF approvals, waiting for the government to say it's not a complete scam. You can use, we'll factor in crypto to a lot of other things that we do. We just want you to work within these restrictions. Once that becomes more clear, I think you'll have a lot more institutional money, a lot more retail money coming in. Of course, not financial advice. I'm just speculating right now on the market. Again, we don't know. I don't know. We don't have a crystal ball, but and then macro, obviously, I mean, we're in the midst of so much problems in the macro that it's hard to tell whether a black swan event's going to come or not. But anyways, a lot being said, I'm still feeling good. And despite the whole thing that we just watched, that might tear other people down and they might be stressed and lose sleep tonight. This is my second cycle now. And I can say that I'm not worried a bit. I was honestly hoping for a stronger hit on the market because I would use that as a DCA opportunity personally. Again, please do not take any of this as go buy this. No, that's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just trying to get the perspective of what I'm seeing. And what I'm seeing is they just want to regulate it and they want their money on Binance and they want to show their dominance in working within their framework, which is fine. It's whatever, we'll figure that out later. But as of right now, I'll go back to, if you're just joining, I'll go back to this post. It's easy to handle to shut down with 23 billion stablecoin with zero funds lost, negotiated a multi-billion-dollar settlement and with government agencies, and you can still trade on Binance. So do what you want with that information. I'm very interested. Again, you watch that live, you are early as can be to what's going on right now. So I'm very interested to see what's going to happen the next few days. I mean, I think news stations are going to pick up on this. Yahoo News, the biggest outlets. I just imagine it's going to be negative. I just imagine it's going to be something to do with crypto being a scam. Imagine that they're going to say similar things that we just saw the Department of Justice say, like, oh, Bitcoin was used for these horrible things. But I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what they say. But you know the facts. And the fact of the matter is that CZ got fined for $4 billion for what they claimed of, I lost the original tweet, what we looked at earlier. Yeah, for conspiracy, conducting unlicensed money transmitting license, and violating internal emergency economics power. And they wanted a slice, and we saw this. Now, this I wouldn't say this is fact. I'd say this falls into conspiracy, but this is important to know if you missed this part of the stream earlier. Is this post was in June 16th of this year, is that there's zero chance for the ETF to be approved with Binance having its current position. And well, Binance no longer has its current position now. I think Pio, he's pretty well respected content creator, he owns his own project. He had a pretty good post too, and this is actually pretty hilarious. Oh man, if you recognize some of those, and that's wild. But this was somebody calling this like a couple months ago, exactly how this is. Mike Alfred. So this was in September. He said that a proposed settlement would involve a permanent ban on conducting operations in the U.S., a multi-billion-dollar fine, and CZ's resignation for return of non-prosecution. So this call was in September. And the beginning said that CZ refused to sign a global settlement in the spring for the Doge, CFTC, and SEC because it would have made it harder to conduct criminal activities. His executive team did not want to face jail time, so they fled en masse. Now it looks like the settlement is back on the table. So this Mike Alfred called this in September, and this is exactly what we see playing out. But anyways, that's really all I have for you guys. The beginning of the stream is muted on accident, so that was my bad. If you can, obviously give this a like. Really appreciate it. Give it a share, and I make content every week, YouTube and Twitter, all things crypto and NFTs. Really appreciate you guys for watching that with me. I'd love to know some of your opinions down below if you're watching this afterwards. All you guys, girls, everybody that tuned in live, I really appreciate you guys. You definitely make things worth it, me not watching this alone. I hope you guys have a fantastic day, and I'll see you next time.